Hey fam, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications. And let's talk about this election. Of course, there's a new poll out that breaks down how black women feel. It was conducted by SDK Knickerbocker. The poll was conducted for 3 groups focusing on women's reproductive rights. Now, this is what they found from black women. The chart on feelings about the direction of the country. The reddish colors to the left stands for angry, disgusted, scared, sad, nervous. Those negative attitudes total 78%. One reason why, when asked if they agreed with the statement, if we go down the same path, I do not think the U.S. will be a safe place for black women, 85% agreed. But black women are doing something about that. 91% of the black voters poll agree with the statement. I voted in the most recent election because I felt like the stakes were too high not to. Is there any group who votes at a higher rate? I don't think so. Black women want to be seen for what they are. Here's the deal. 93% agreed elected officials need to understand that there are differences in the black community and not everyone thinks the same. Different from white women. Quote, as a woman of color, I want my elected officials to understand how my experience and my needs differ from their white women constituents. 89% agreement. Okay, one more. Black women were both more engaged in voting than their Latina and Asian counterparts, but also more worried about the future. And 2 major things there. And I want to pull this story here. I was looking on Politico about the effort that Senator Elizabeth Warren is making towards black voters. And I'm going to go to Teresa, then Davon. So, Teresa, Elizabeth Warren is getting a lot of attention from black activists for her very specific policies dealing with the issue of racial inequality. And so, look, if you're a candidate, you better be speaking specifically to what black women want to hear, and I dare say what black men want to hear as well, because there was a 6-point gap, a 9-point gap between black women and black men for Democrats, not only in 2016 with Trump, but also in 2012 between Obama and Romney. Teresa, you're first, then Davon.
Yeah, so black women are obviously making their plea once again to those who are running to get our vote. As the studies and the polls have been showing that, yes, some of those disparities, the equal pay wage, the gap within that, some racial disparities, the women in prison and the dignity that happens within that. So most of these criminal justice issues that need to be reformed should be reformed. But I think some of the issues that we are having in terms of kind of getting that word out is really just kind of talking points. So for me personally, I'm not seeing any candidate outside of, especially the ones that have experience and, are sitting in the Senate, are really, expressing what they have done legislatively in their past about, dealing with those African-American issues. But yet they want to get on the campaign trail and say something different because they are running. So for me, I'm high hopes for those who want to do something. But again, I'm looking for a little bit more than lip service.
Yeah,
Davon,
I think,
when you look at this in terms of how black women feel, candidates better be smart speaking to those issues. But I do want to ask you, though, this poll is dealing with black women. I have been saying the last several years that Democrats better really pay attention. I get black girl magic. I get into targeting black women. But there's an issue there. There's a gap there between black men and black women voting for Democratic candidates. And black men are saying, I want to hear you speaking to me as a black man as well. Davon, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so a few things. I think the first is that there's a history of black women really serving as the backbone in terms of the political organization amongst black folks throughout our sojourn here in the United States. So you think about like the Montgomery Improvement Association, you think of someone like Joanne Robinson, who kind of was the operator of the machine that was the Montgomery Improvement Association that was, involved in the organizing that dealt with segregation down there. And so, there's history all over the United States like that, where you have, colored women's clubs, that were big parts of creating political organization. And many of the remnants of those political machines exist today. And so I think the data from the report that we're referencing just shows really the remnants of the political organizing that was really the bedrock of that. Now, to your point about the gap between Black women and Black men in terms of voting, I do believe if we really look at mass incarceration and the war on drugs, and we look at the particular impact it had on the social fabric of the Black community, if you think about the way in which Black men were essentially ripped from many of their families as a result of the policy of the war on drugs, it goes to show that there's certain kinds of issues that wouldn't get talked about or wouldn't get included in the mainstream of the Democratic Party because, unfortunately, a lot of Black men have been, marginalized in this society in a particular kind of way. And not to say that Black women aren't marginalized, but to say there's a particular kind of way that Black men are marginalized that I think has undermined the real nature of our participation. And so I think one of the things that we need to be doing as Black folks in our relationship to the Democratic Party is demanding that they speak to more issues that impact a broader swath of our community. The reason we see such low voter turnout, particularly in urban cities where you have 10% of the electorate turning out, is because the Democratic Party establishment has not really backed candidates that really talk about some of the things that we're actually getting to now. So now we're talking about police brutality, we're talking about mass incarceration and racial inequality, but all that has happened under the backdrop of major uprisings and protests and challenges to the Democratic Party establishment. And so now we have this runway to talk about issues that otherwise haven't been talked about. And so using the machinery that Black women have laid the groundwork for politically, and then infusing more issues that impact broader swaths of our community, I think is the way forward.
Malik, again, I think that if you look at this polling data, when you hear what Black women are saying, they're very concerned about the future. I think that is very much about Trump, his appeal to white nationalism and this whole white fear that is driving so much of the conversation today.
Yeah, and so Davon brought up a good analogy. He talked about clearing the way through the protests and some of the upheaval to ensure that there's a runway for these candidates. But I would caution us not just to clear the runway, but to check the flight plan, because we're electing these officers and sending them on and in the sky, and then they're changing the flight plan. And so we get a lot of talk, a lot of what we would just call rhetoric in the space. 84% of Black women said too often the candidates running for office do not acknowledge their issues and what matters to them the most. And then you saw the Democratic Party come behind it with a seat at the table. Well, that's great. It sounds good, but it left many wondering, where is that table? Is it outside of the boardroom? Is it in the kitchen? Is it in the lunchroom? But it's certainly not at a true seat of power. And so what we are seeing across not just the women of color, but women in general, they are deciding that they want and they are demanding a larger slice of the pie of power. And that is dangerous to grumpy old white men in power, and definitely to hard-headed Black men who won't support them and get out the way and ensure that our women get in office and take care of not just their agenda, but also the agenda of Black men. We've been overlooked for so long, and they are our champions. But what these women are saying now, it's not a conversation of may I. It's a get down or lay down. Either give us the power or we're going to take the power one way.
Support Roland Martin Unfiltered. Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.